Gabriel Rowe heard the first voice before he knew there was a hollow place in the wall. He had been on the north walk of the convent of the Holy Consolation since 7 that morning in the last week of August 1962, standing on a plank scaffold above a courtyard gone yellow with heat. The limestone under his chisel was hot enough to warm the handle through his glove. Beyond the convent roofs, Eureka Springs, Arkansas, folded downward in steep streets, iron balconies, stone retaining walls, and trees, dulled by 6 weeks without rain. Even the cicadas seemed exhausted. Their noise rose and fell like machinery left running in another valley. The sisters had called him because a section of mortar had dropped from one of the inner cloister piers during the night. Mother Severine had described it over the telephone as a minor failure in an old joint. Gabriel had expected loose lime, perhaps water damage from the copper gutter overhead. Instead, when he lifted the first stone, he found a narrow clay tube running vertically through the center of the pier. He leaned close. The tube was no wider than 2 fingers and black within, though the sunlight struck the opening directly. He tapped the stone beside it with the wooden end of his chisel. 3 knocks answered from below. Gabriel straightened. His apprentice, Everett Pike, was across the courtyard unloading sacks of hydrated lime from the truck. No one stood beneath the scaffold. The lower cloister was locked, and its windows had been painted shut before the war. He tapped again. Twice. 2 knocks came back. "Everett," he called. The boy looked up, squinting. "Yes, sir." "Quit fooling with the pipes." "I'm not near any pipe." Gabriel placed his ear to the clay opening. At first, he heard only a faint current of air. It smelled of boiled linen, dust, and the medicinal sweetness of camphor. Then a girl's voice spoke from somewhere deep in the pier. Elaine Margaret Rowe. His daughter's full name passed through the tube with such perfect calm that he struck his head on the stone above him. The voice continued before he could pull away. "Not yet promised. Not yet buried. Not yet ours." The tube exhaled against his cheek. Gabriel descended the scaffold too quickly, missed the last rung, and landed hard on one knee. He did not tell Everett what he had heard. He only ordered him to keep away from the damaged pier and went to find whoever had keys to the lower walk. Sister Callista found him first. She came through the western arcade without haste, a broad, straight-backed woman in a black habit faded brown at the shoulders. She was nearly 60, Gabriel guessed, though her face had the worn, indistinct age of rock exposed to weather. The white band around her forehead had been patched at one corner. She carried no rosary. In one hand, she held a tin cup of water, and in the other, a wooden ruler. She stopped beneath the scaffold and looked at the black opening in the pier. "You struck it?" she asked. Gabriel disliked the certainty in her voice. "There's an old conduit inside. Could be part of a drain system." "You struck it?" "Twice." "How many times did it answer?" He stared at her. Everett had gone still beside the truck. "First 3, Gabriel said. "Then 2. Sister Callista closed her eyes. The tin cup bent slightly in her grip. "Did it use a name?" Gabriel's mouth went dry. "What is that pipe?" She opened her eyes again. "Did it use your daughter's name?" He stepped toward her. "How do you know my daughter's name?" "I do not. That is why I asked." The convent had accepted Elaine as a postulant in June. She was due to arrive before supper that same day with 2 other young women. Gabriel had not told the work crew, and he had never met Sister Callista. The application had been handled through the parish in Berryville, not through the convent office. Yet the voice in the wall had spoken Elaine's middle name, which even the parish secretary had once misspelled. Sister Callista looked toward the eastern range, where the novice dormitory stood behind rows of shuttered windows. "Take your tools down," she said. "Leave the stones as they are. I have a contract with Mother Severine." You have until the sun leaves the herb court. For what? To close both cloisters. Everett gave a nervous laugh, but Sister Callista did not look at him. Every arch, she continued, every door between the upper walk and the lower. No water from the convent spring in your mortar. Haul it from town. Use clean sand. Do not let any woman who has not taken final vows cross the courtyard after the first seal is laid. Gabriel felt anger return because it was easier than fear. You want me to wall up half the convent before sundown because an old tube carries voices? I want you to keep 3 girls from becoming rooms in this house. A door opened above them. Mother Severine Quill appeared on the second-floor gallery, one hand resting on the rail. She was tall and very thin, her black veil falling in severe lines past her shoulders. The silver cross at her breast flashed once in the sun. "Sister Callista," she called, "return to the infirmary." Callista did not move. Mother Severine descended the exterior stair with measured steps. When she reached the courtyard, she addressed Gabriel as though Callista were not present. "The damaged pier is to be repaired, Mr. Rowe. Nothing more. The lower cloister has been closed for structural reasons since 1941. Sister Callista has certain fixed ideas about it." I heard a voice in the wall. "Old buildings conduct sound. The kitchen is directly beyond the refectory passage." The voice used my daughter's name. Mother Severine's expression changed only around the eyes. "Elaine is expected today. Her name is known here." "Not to me," Sister Callista said. Mother Severine turned. "Your obedience is not a matter for public discussion." Neither were the other girls. The courtyard seemed to contract. Everett studied the ground. Gabriel looked from one nun to the other and understood that the hole in the pier was not the beginning of the trouble. It was merely where the trouble had become audible. Mother Severine told him to continue the repair. She instructed Everett to mix the mortar with water from the covered cistern beside the kitchen, the same water the convent had always used. Sister Callista stepped between the boy and the sacks of lime. "Not that water." "It is drawn from Consolation Spring," Mother Severine said. "It has served this house for 70 years. "That is precisely why." Mother Severine's jaw tightened. "Go inside." For a moment, Gabriel thought Callista might refuse. Instead, she took the wooden ruler, snapped it across her knee, and placed the 2 pieces on the courtyard flagstones like a broken boundary marker. "When the shadows touch them," she said to Gabriel, "do not let your daughter answer anyone who calls her by a name you have never given her." Then she walked away. By noon, the temperature had climbed above 95. Gabriel considered leaving the pier open and taking Elaine back to Berryville the moment she arrived. Yet he had spent most of the summer arguing against her decision to enter the convent, and he knew what she would hear if he tried to drag her home because of a voice in a wall. She would hear contempt for her faith. She would hear the old accusation that she was using religion to hide from grief. She would not hear fear. He returned to the scaffold. Everett had already filled the mixing trough from the cistern. The water looked clear, with a faint mineral cloud at the bottom. Gabriel told himself that hollow conduits could carry speech from rooms no one suspected. He told himself that Mother Severine might have read Elaine's papers aloud somewhere below. He told himself that Sister Callista had learned the name and lied. He mixed the mortar. The first trowelful touched the exposed clay tube at 12 minutes past 1. The mortar shivered. Gabriel withdrew the trowel. A line of tiny bubbles appeared on the wet surface, arranged like the print of a mouth. They opened and closed once. Then the mortar settled. Everett saw it too. "Air pocket," he said. Gabriel did not answer. They reset the stone and packed the joint. Within minutes, the new mortar began drawing moisture from the rock around it. Not outward, as mortar sometimes did in heat, but upward. Clear beads climbed the face of the pier against gravity, and vanished beneath the Capitol. At 3 o'clock, the convent station wagon came through the gate carrying Elaine and the 2 other postulants. Gabriel saw his daughter before she saw him. She sat in the back seat with a small suitcase on her lap, wearing the blue cotton dress Rose had sewn 2 summers before she died. Elaine's brown hair had been pinned plainly at the nape. She looked older than 19 until she smiled at one of the girls beside her. Then she looked exactly as she had at 14, returning from school with some secret good news. Sister Agatha Fenn, the novice mistress, stepped from the front passenger side. She was a compact woman with quick hands and a face made gentle by constant attention. She introduced the other candidates: Doris Mott, a farm girl from near Harrison, and Catherine Pender, whom everyone called Kit, 17 and pale from the journey. Elaine noticed the truck and crossed the courtyard. "You didn't tell me you were working here," she said. "You didn't ask." Her smile faded. Since Rose's death, they had learned to injure each other with small, careful sentences. Gabriel wanted to put both hands on her shoulders and take her through the gate. Instead, he glanced toward the repaired pier. The mortar there was dry now, though none of the other joints had set. "Has anyone told you the lower cloister is unsafe?" he asked. Elaine followed his gaze. "Mother Severine said part of the old wing is closed. Stay out of it." "I'm not a child." "No, that's why I'm telling you once." Sister Agatha called the girls to bring in their luggage. Elaine lifted her suitcase. From the sealed pier came the sound of a baby drawing breath. Only Gabriel reacted. Elaine had already turned away. Across the courtyard, Sister Callista stood behind an infirmary window. Her palm was pressed flat against the glass. A thin gray line, like wet clay, ran from one nostril to her upper lip. The broken pieces of her ruler lay where she had placed them. The sun had reached the first one. By supper, Gabriel had convinced himself to finish the contract and leave before dark. He told Everett to scrape the trough clean, then went to the truck for a fresh sack of sand. When he returned, a strip of white cloth had been tied around the repaired pier. Sister Callista stood beside it. "Who let you out of the infirmary?" Gabriel asked. "No one put me in." She handed him the tin cup she had carried earlier. Its bottom was coated with a gray sediment. "Smell it." He did. The odor was stronger now. Camphor, wet wool, and the sour sweetness of milk left beside a stove. "The spring water?" he asked. "The house remembers through it." Gabriel set the cup on the scaffold. "Stone doesn't remember." "Then you will have no difficulty sleeping tonight." "What did you mean when you said the girls could become rooms?" Callista looked toward the refectory windows. Inside, the sisters and candidates were taking their places at long tables. Elaine passed one window carrying a stack of plates. "Before a woman enters this order," Callista said, "she is asked to loosen her hold on the name her family gave her. It is meant to be an offering." Here, it became an opening. Gabriel waited. "There are 9 hollow piers in the upper cloister," she continued. 9 below. They were built to carry whispers from one walk to the other. The sisters called them consolation channels. Women spoke into them so that grief could be heard without faces meeting. "What women?" Callista's gaze settled on him. "Women whose families wanted them hidden." The refectory bell began to ring inside the building, a modest handbell, not the tower bell. Gabriel flinched despite himself. Callista did not. "Pregnant women," she said. Most were brought here under other names. Some were told they had been accepted as temporary postulants. Some believed they would be allowed to stay after the child was born. They were dressed in gray, taught silence, and kept in the upper walk. Their infants were carried through the lower cloister to the side gate. "Adopted?" That was the word used. Gabriel thought of Rose in the weeks after Elaine's birth, refusing to sleep unless the cradle was within reach of her hand. "And the tubes?" The mothers were made to speak a renunciation into them. They were told it was necessary before the child could be placed with a respectable family. The words traveled down to the sisters waiting below. What words? Callista's mouth tightened. That the child was freely surrendered, that the mother would never ask where it had gone, that she had no claim in this life or the next. The last sunlight had reached the second piece of the broken ruler. Gabriel said, "You expect me to believe voices stayed in those pipes for 40 years. I expect you to believe the voice that knew Elaine. Mother Severine says the conduits carry sound from the kitchen. Mother Severine was 17 when she first carried a basket through the lower cloister." Gabriel looked toward the refectory again. Callista lifted the strip of cloth from the pier. Under it, the repaired mortar had changed. 5 shallow dents marked the surface, 4 close together and 1 apart, the shape of a small hand pressed from within. Gabriel touched one. The mortar was cold. "Seal it," Callista said. "The joint is already closed. The opening is not in the joint anymore." Before he could ask what she meant, a scream came from the second floor. They ran toward the novice stair. Sister Agatha reached the landing ahead of them and found Kit Pender in the dormitory, kneeling beside an open wardrobe. The girl's suitcase lay on the bed. Her clothes had been removed and folded into a neat stack on the floor. In her arms, she held a limestone corbel that must have weighed 30 pounds. She rocked it against her breast. Doris stood in the doorway, crying. Elaine had one hand over her mouth. "Kit," Sister Agatha said softly, "put that down." The girl looked up. Her pupils were wide. A raw red line crossed the inside of each wrist, exactly where the postulant's white admission cords had been tied that afternoon. "She won't sleep," Kit whispered. "What won't sleep?" Kit looked at the stone in her arms. A dark patch spread across the front of her dress. Gabriel thought the corbel was wet. Then he saw that the moisture came from the stone itself, seeping through tiny pores in the limestone with the cloudy color of watered milk. Sister Callista stepped into the room. "What name did it give you?" Mother Severine arrived behind her. "Enough." Kit's rocking stopped. Her head turned toward Callista with a slow, listening movement. "Agnes," she said. The room became still. Callista's face emptied of color. "Who is Agnes?" Elaine asked. Kit smiled at someone no one else could see. "She says she waited under the stairs until her feet went numb. She says, Sister Margaret promised to come back." Callista crossed the room in 2 strides and struck the stone from Kit's arms. It hit the floor, split along a hidden seam, and released a burst of warm air. The smell of camphor filled the dormitory. Kit collapsed. Mother Severine ordered everyone out except Sister Agatha and Dr. Lionel Sayer, who was called from his office on Spring Street. Gabriel remained long enough to see the inside of the broken corbel. A clay cup had been set within the limestone when the ornament was carved. Its narrow mouth pointed toward the room. A plug of dark wax had softened and fallen away. Inside the cup was a tightly rolled strip of blue striped cloth. Callista reached for it, but Mother Severine seized her wrist. "You have done enough damage," the prioress said. "I did not open it. You frightened a sick child. She is not sick yet." Mother Severine's fingers tightened. "Go to your cell." Callista looked at Kit, who lay breathing rapidly on the bed. "Do not let her sleep after sunset. Do not let her be alone with a closed door. And whatever voice she hears, do not permit her to answer with nom. Yes." Dr. Sayer arrived 20 minutes later, carrying a black leather bag and smelling of tobacco. He examined Kit, took her pulse, inspected the marks on her wrists, and asked what she had eaten. She remembered nothing after unpacking. The limestone corbel lay under a towel in the corner. Mother Severine did not mention the cloth inside it. "Heat, travel, nerves," the doctor said. "Perhaps a fainting spell with hysterical behavior. These old houses magnify noises. 3 young women entering a strict life on the hottest day of the year. There's no mystery in a little excitement. Gabriel asked about the liquid from the stone. Dr. Sayer looked at him as though he had introduced vulgarity into the room. Condensation? In this heat? Porous stone can hold moisture. And speak? The doctor shut his bag. Mr. Rowe, I mend bodies. I leave speaking masonry to your trade. Mother Severine accepted the explanation. She assigned Sister Agatha to remain with Kit and instructed the other candidates to continue their schedule. Evening prayer would begin at 7. Their formal entrance into postulancy would take place the following morning, when each would receive a plain gray dress and be addressed by a chosen religious name for the first time. Sister Callista appeared at the end of the corridor as the girls were led away. "No new names," she said. Mother Severine did not raise her voice. "You are forbidden to speak to the candidates." "I am forbidden by whom?" "By your superior." Callista looked at Gabriel. "Ask her what happened in August of 1936. Mother Severine's face changed then, not with fear, but recognition. It was the look of a person who has heard a lock turn in a room believed empty. "She was ill," the prioress said. "There was an episode. Ask her why the lower cloister was closed 5 years later. The foundation shifted. Ask her why every window was painted shut from the outside." Mother Severine called 2 sisters to escort Callista away. The older nun offered no resistance. As she passed Gabriel, she pressed something into his hand. It was half of the broken wooden ruler. On one side, in pencil, she had written 9 times. Margaret Rusk. Gabriel stared after her. Elaine touched his sleeve. "Who is that?" He closed his fist. "I don't know." She studied him. "You're frightened." "I'm angry." "You always call it that." The sentence landed because Rose had said it first, in the hospital, when Gabriel refused to discuss the possibility that she might not come home. Elaine had inherited her mother's ability to find the truth inside his worst word. He led her to the far end of the corridor, away from the other candidates. "I heard your name in that wall this morning," he said. She waited for him to explain. "Your full name?" "Then it said you weren't promised yet." Elaine glanced toward the stairwell. Was anyone below? No one. Could a sister have spoken through a vent? That's what Mother Severine wants me to think. And Sister Callista? She wants the cloisters sealed and all of you sent home. Elaine looked toward Kit's room. Because of what happened to her? Because it has happened before. You don't know that. No, I don't. But I know old stone. Water follows old paths. Sound follows old paths. Sometimes trouble does too. Elaine folded her arms. You have wanted me to leave since I applied. That doesn't make me wrong. It makes this convenient, Gabriel nearly shouted. He stopped because the corridor itself seemed to be listening. I'm taking you home tonight, he said. You can't. I am your father. I'm 19. You're still my responsibility. No, that is what you cannot forgive. He stared at her. She lowered her voice. Mother died, and you decided I had to remain exactly where she left me. In that house, at that table, wearing her dresses, going to her parish. You don't want me safe. You want nothing else to change. The convent lights flickered as the generator took the evening load. Somewhere below, a pipe gave a hollow knock. Elaine's expression softened, but she did not take back the words. I am not entering because I hate you, she said. I am entering because I need a life that is mine. Before Gabriel could answer, a whisper came through the wall beside them. Not from a visible pipe, not from a vent, from the plaster itself. Then give us the one they call you. Elaine turned toward it. Gabriel seized her shoulders. The whisper moved along the corridor, passing behind framed prints and closed doors, each syllable traveling through the wall at walking speed. "Give us the one they call you." Elaine's lips parted. Gabriel covered her mouth with his hand. The plaster beneath his other palm felt warm and soft. For one instant, it yielded like skin. Something on the far side pressed back. He pulled Elaine away. At the opposite end of the corridor, Doris Mott stood motionless outside the washroom. Her head was tilted toward a porcelain basin. A woman's voice rose from the drain. "Dorothea?" Doris answered, "Yes." Every door in the novice corridor slammed shut. The electric lights went out. In the darkness, 9 women began weeping inside the walls. The sound did not come from one direction. It moved through the building in layers. Young voices, old voices, voices too tired to produce more than breath. Beneath them ran a thinner sound, repetitive and hungry, like infants trying to cry after crying too long. Sister Agatha called for candles. Mother Severine ordered everyone to remain where they were. Gabriel kept hold of Elaine and felt her trembling against him. The floor under Doris darkened in a perfect square. A seam appeared around it, outlining stones that had no joints a moment before. The square sank less than an inch. Cold air poured up from the gap, carrying the smell of wet clay. Doris stood at its center. Her bare feet left no weight on the stones. She looked down as though she could see through them. "They're walking underneath us," she said. The weeping stopped. From below came the scrape of many baskets moving across stone. Sister Callista's voice rang from the stairwell. "Do not let her step off that square." A candle flared in her hand. She had escaped or been released. Gabriel never learned which. She came toward Doris, holding the flame low. "Dorothea Mott," she said. "Look at me." Doris did not. "Your father is Samuel Mott. Your mother is Lenora Mott. Your brothers are Clay and Benjamin. You were born on the 4th of February. You broke your left arm falling from a hay wagon when you were 8. You hate the skin that forms on boiled milk. Look at me." Doris blinked. The square beneath her sank another inch. Callista slapped her. Doris gasped and stepped toward the nun. Gabriel expected the floor to open. Instead, the seams vanished, leaving uninterrupted stone. The lights returned. The corridor door stood open again. The weeping had ceased. From Kit's room came Sister Agatha's terrified call. Kit was gone. The bed was still warm. The window was locked from the inside. The only other opening in the room was the wardrobe where she had found the stone. At the back of the wardrobe, behind hanging clothes, the plaster had fallen away in a tall oval. Beyond it lay a cloister walk lit by late afternoon sun. That was impossible. The wardrobe stood on the 2nd floor, facing the outer hillside. There was no courtyard beyond it, no arcade, no open sky. Yet Gabriel saw stone arches, a square of yellow grass, and shadows stretched long across flagstones. At the far end, Kit walked barefoot beside a woman in a gray dress. The woman carried a covered basket. Kit carried nothing, but her arms were curved as though supporting a child. "Kit!" Elaine shouted. The girl looked back. Her face was not Kit's. It was older, hollow-cheeked, and wet with tears. Sister Callista blew out her candle. The opening snapped shut. Plaster filled the wardrobe back from edge to center, smooth as poured cream. Mother Severine crossed herself. For the first time that day, she looked at Sister Callista without authority. "What have you done?" she whispered. Callista's answer was almost gentle. "What you left unfinished." They searched the convent until midnight. Sheriff Varden checked the road, the ravine, the spring house, and every room Mother Severine permitted him to see. Dogs from a farm outside town circled the upper courtyard once, whining, then refused to pass under the eastern arch. Dr. Sayer spoke of heat. hysteria, and suggestion. Mother Severine told the sheriff that Kit had slipped away during the electrical failure. She did not mention the cloister inside the wardrobe. Near midnight, Gabriel found a wet footprint on the underside of the second-floor stair. A second appeared farther along the ceiling beam, then a third, leading upside down toward the locked door of the lower cloister. Sister Callista stood beside it. "The house is turning its walks over," she said. "Soon, it will not matter which floor we stand on." Father Adrian Moss arrived from Fayetteville before 1. He was the convent chaplain and the diocese's man for problems that required quiet. He listened to Mother Severine, spoke briefly with Dr. Sire, and told Gabriel that grief and panic could make ordinary architecture appear malignant. Gabriel pointed to the locked door. "Open it." "It has been closed since 1941, Mother Severine said. "Then one of you knows why." Callista took the broken ruler from his hand and pressed the penciled name against the door. "Margaret Rusk," Gabriel read. The scratching on the other side stopped. Callista told them what the convent had been built to hide. Beginning before the First World War, families brought unmarried pregnant daughters to Holy Consolation under borrowed names. The women wore gray, lived beside the upper cloister, and were described as temporary postulants. After delivery, their infants were carried through the lower walk to a side gate. The mothers were seated before clay mouths set into the hollow piers and required to renounce every claim to the child. The voices traveled down through the walls to a sister who witnessed the statement below. Callista had entered in 1923 as Margaret Rusk. The sisters called her Agnes. After her son was born, they said a family in Fort Smith had chosen him, that he would be baptized Peter, that he would sleep in a room with yellow curtains. She began the required renunciation, but through the clay channel she heard the infant coughing in the lower infirmary. She refused to finish. Her father would not receive her home. She stayed as a servant and later entered the order by choice, taking the name Sister Callista. 13 years afterward, she found an old laundry token and a pharmacy account. Her son had never left the convent. He had died 9 days after birth and been taken to a county pauper ground under an institutional alias. His name, the one Margaret had given him before the sisters replaced it, was Thomas. He was one of 14 infants who died while their mothers were told they had been adopted. In August 1936, Callista opened the 9 clay channels and spoke Thomas's name into the unfinished one. Every renunciation stored in the walls answered. 4 candidates in the novice wing forgot their birth names before sunrise. One disappeared behind the infirmary stair and returned 6 days later with the memories of women she had never known. The channels were packed with wax, wool, and dry lime. The lower cloister was locked. Callista was punished for disobedience, but her interrupted renunciation remained joined to the system like a hinge. "No novices entered for 5 years," she said. "When they returned, I kept them from the lower walk. This year, they reopened the old dormitory. Then your mortar carried spring water into the clay." Mother Severine called the story an illness shaped by guilt. Father Moss admitted that Holy Consolation had once arranged placements, but insisted that Callista had woven tragedy into superstition. Then the lower door spoke in Rose's voice. "Gabriel," it said, "Elaine needs me." He reached for the lock before Callista struck his hand with the ruler. "That is not your wife. Closed spaces give it mouths. Do not answer through wood, pipe, plaster, or glass. Do not follow a familiar voice where you cannot see its body. And do not let a candidate accept a name the house offers." The door spoke again, using a sentence Rose had said in the hospital where no nun could have heard it. Father Moss stepped away. They moved Elaine and Doris into the parlor, where 2 windows stood open to the night. Doris had forgotten her brother's names and insisted that her father had abandoned her at the convent gate. Elaine still knew herself, but a soft voice followed her through the room, calling from the fireplace, the telephone receiver, and the hollow legs of a table. Callista explained the pattern. The old ritual had 3 parts: the hidden mother above, the witnessing sister below, and the child carried out between them. Doris had answered the drain and been chosen as the mother. Kit had passed through the wardrobe and become the witness called Agnes. Elaine, whom the peer had named first, had been chosen as the child. "If it completes the passage," Callista said, "Elaine will not die. That would be mercy. The house will empty her memories and use her to carry all the others beyond these walls." The convent had no complete plan of the acoustic system. Everett remembered the maker's mark on the broken clay cup and drove Gabriel, Elaine, and Callista to an abandoned potter's kiln outside town. In a mouse-eaten ledger, they found an 1890 order for 42 auricular vessels, 9 in the upper cloister, 9 below, and 24 clustered in a central chamber beneath the eastern crossing. The potter called that chamber the ear. A later order requested inner clay sleeves for permanent retention. A folded drawing showed the 2 cloisters stacked on the hillside, one above the other. A bricked service passage beneath the chapel stair led to the ear. They returned at sunrise and found every upper window open. White curtains streamed outward into motionless air. The dry fountain had filled with cloudy water. Doris stood beside it, in a gray postulant dress no one admitted giving her, her hair cut short, white cords tied around her wrists. Mother Severine and Father Moss had begun the entrance rite, believing formal admission would protect her. When Callista tore away the cords, the flagstones around Doris showed the impressions of invisible women kneeling. From every window came the same sentence and overlapping voices. "I accept that the house shall remember in my place." Gabriel and Everett broke through the brick wall beneath the chapel stair. The passage descended behind white tile pierced by clay mouths. At the bottom, a limestone slab opened into the lower cloister. It was larger than the building. Arches repeated beyond sight. Covered baskets stood along the wet walk. In the central yard, 14 black iron bassinets rocked by themselves. Beside each, the shadow of a kneeling woman moved, although no body cast it. Kit stood across the yard in a gray dress, holding a bundle wrapped in blue striped cloth. Callista entered alone at first. "Agnes," Kit said. "Margaret," Callista answered. "I entered as Margaret Rusk. I bore a son. I named him Thomas. He died here. They lied to me." The bundle began to writhe, not with one body, but with many shapes pressing outward. Kit screamed and dropped it. The cloth struck the paving empty. The shadows rushed Callista. Gabriel and Everett seized Kit, but the cloister closed into a circuit. Every arch returned them to the same yard. Gabriel extinguished the lamp. In darkness, the false architecture vanished, leaving only 42 whispering channels and Elaine's voice calling from the service passage above. He followed his daughter's voice and found the true door. They carried Kit out. Callista crossed last, covered for an instant by the shadows of many women. At the threshold, the shadows peeled away and were drawn back beneath the stone slab. Kit opened her eyes and spoke with more than one voice. 3 have entered. 1 must be given. 1 must witness. 1 must carry. By noon, the voices had spread through the entire convent. Water climbed walls. Doors opened into the wrong rooms. The upper courtyard sometimes appeared through windows on the lower floor, while the lower cloister showed beneath the chapel tiles like a reflection under shallow water. Father Moss obtained authority from the diocese to conduct an emergency profession at 4. He argued that vows would move the candidates beyond the dangerous state between names. Callista warned that the house wanted precisely that moment. A woman loosening one identity and accepting another. Mother Severine supported the priest because holy consolation had no future without novices. Callista spread the blue-striped cloth on the refectory table. 14 damp infant handprints appeared across it. "Buildings do not inherit guilt," she said. "People keep feeding it." Gabriel loaded bricks onto handcarts. Everett, Sister Agatha, and 2 kitchen sisters helped. He would seal every entrance to both cloisters with dry lime and town water. The ear would be closed last. Elaine left first. At the outer gate, the road became a corridor of pale arches, and Rose's voice called from beside a covered basket. Gabriel took his daughter's hand. "Your mother never asked you to stay dead with her," he said. Elaine crossed under her full name. The vision broke. Doris clung to the gatepost, crying that her baby was inside. Callista recited the girl's real history until Doris answered, "My name is Doris Lenora Mott." She stepped out, and the wet stains on her gray dress vanished. Kit remained in the chapel. Father Moss had placed a black veil over her white hair and begun the profession rite. When he asked what name she sought, the voices inside her answered Agnes. Callista tore away the veil. Kit turned toward Mother Severine and spoke in the voice of the young mother the prioress had once betrayed. "You carried him under the floor." Mother Severine dropped the rite book. She confessed that before she became prioress, when she was still Sister Joan, she had carried Thomas through the lower cloister to the isolation ward. She had heard Margaret stop the renunciation above. Under orders, she wrote that the surrender was complete and spent the rest of her life calling obedience innocence. "My name before this house was Joan Quill," she said. "I signed the lie." The chapel doors opened. Kit inhaled sharply. "Catherine Ann Pender," Callista said. Kit looked at her. "My mother calls me Kit." They carried her across the gate. With all 3 candidates outside under their own names, the house convulsed. Shadows rotated around the upper court against the sun. The fountain sank, revealing a shaft lined with clay mouths. Covered baskets scraped beneath the chapel floor. Gabriel and Everett sealed the novice stair, the refectory passage, and the western arcade. Sisters carried bricks until their arms failed. Dry lime burned their fingers. Father Moss tried to stop them, then went to telephone the diocese. Every number connected him to a woman breathing inside a wall. He left the convent before sunset. Mother Severine worked beside Gabriel. At the service passage, Callista removed her veil and gave it to Elaine. Without it, she looked less like the cursed figure the town would later imagine, and more like a tired woman who had been denied an ordinary life. She placed the broken ruler in Elaine's hand. "Keep both names on it." Elaine read the pencil marks. "Margaret Rusk." Callista smiled. No one has said it kindly in years. The tiled passage was filling with cloudy water. Clay mouths pushed from the walls, opening and closing without tongues. Gabriel carried bricks down to the limestone door, while Everett mixed mortar above. Beyond the door, the 14 bassinets had formed a circle around the chair where Margaret had been forced to renounce her son. The shadow mothers waited behind them. Callista walked inside. "My name is Margaret Rusk," she said. "I became Sister Callista by my own vow, not yours. I bore a son named Thomas. He was not freely surrendered. He was not forgotten." The shadows lifted their heads. She told Gabriel that her unfinished words were the last restraint. She had to remain within the ear while he sealed it. When he refused to bury her alive, she answered, "Your daughter is outside because you finally let her choose. Let me choose." He laid the first brick. The clay vessel screamed in voices close enough to touch his ear. Blue-striped cloth pushed from their cracks. Water rose to his knees. From behind him, Rose's voice spoke his deepest regret. "You let me die without saying you were afraid." His hand stopped. Callista called from the cloister. "Do not give a closed wall the right to forgive you." Gabriel laid the next brick. As the opening narrowed, the impossible arches shortened. The lower cloister became finite again. Callista stood beside the empty chair, surrounded by the shadows of the mothers whose words the house had kept. Only one brick remained. "Write the rule," she said. With the point of his trowel, Gabriel carved into the wet face, "No novice shall enter this house." "Forever," Callista said. He added the word. She put her palm against the opening. Gabriel placed his opposite hers. "Margaret Rusk," he said. "Sister Callista," she answered. He set the final brick between them. The mortar hardened instantly. The water dropped. Every clay mouth exhaled a warm breath, smelling of camphor, wet wool, and summer milk. Then the convent went silent. For 3 days, footsteps moved within the sealed cloisters, first above, then below. Mother Severine left food outside the brickwork. Each morning the plate was empty. On the 4th day, it remained untouched. Mother Severine sent a confession to the diocese, the county prosecutor, and every family address she could recover. No charges followed. Too many principals were dead. Too many records gone. The newspaper called the maternity work a regrettable practice of another era. Holy Consolation was closed to candidates. Mother Severine wrote the prohibition into the house register, naming every category by which a young woman might otherwise be admitted. She signed it twice, Joan Quill and Mother Severine. Kit returned to her family. Her hair stayed white, and sometimes she remembered children she had never born, but she kept her own life. Doris went back to her father's farm and never again allowed a door in her house to be locked from the outside. Elaine did not take vows. She also did not return to the unchanged life Gabriel had imagined. The following spring, she entered nursing school in Little Rock. In her desk, she kept the broken ruler tied with her old admission cord. Margaret Rusk was written 9 times on one side. Elaine added Thomas on the other. Once each year, Gabriel climbed the convent hill and inspected the seals. He never found a crack. Consolation. Spring was diverted down the ravine. The novice dormitory remained empty. The surviving sisters lived in the western wing until age carried them away one by one. People in Eureka Springs began calling Callista the cursed nun. Some said she had cursed the Cloisters in 1936. Others said the dead mothers had cursed her. The legend made her guilty because a guilty woman was easier to remember than a guilty institution. Elaine corrected anyone who would listen. Sister Callista had not cursed young women away from the convent, she said. She had forbidden the convent from taking them. In 1978, a contractor drilled a test hole through the eastern wall without permission. The bit came back warm. Gray dust poured from the hole for nearly an hour, mixed with tiny strips of blue-striped cloth. He sealed it before dark and refused to return. The final photograph of Gabriel at Holy Consolation was taken beside the gate plaque with Elaine. Behind them, the sealed windows reflected the dry August courtyard. When the film was developed, one window showed a woman on the other side. She wore no veil. Her short gray hair was uncovered. One hand rested against the glass. Across the inside of the pane, traced in pale moisture by a hand that should not have been there, were 4 words. They kept their names.